The great hall of the Zephyrian Council buzzed with worried voices. Ambassador Veltar looked at the message screen one more time, his green skin turning pale. The words glowed red against the dark surface, each letter spelling out doom for millions of innocent lives. The Korthok Empire was coming. Veltar had served the Council for 30 years. He had seen wars start and end, watched species rise and fall, but nothing had ever frightened him like this. The Korthok were not just another aggressive race looking for new worlds to claim. They were destroyers. They burned entire planets. Just to watch them die, Commander Zixai stood at the center of the hall, his forearms moving as he spoke. The Melodian had flown straight from the border systems, his ship still smoking from a close encounter with Korthok scouts. His usually calm voice shook with fear. "The Altarion colonies have maybe 10 days," he said. "The Korthok fleet is huge. 300 ships, maybe more. They are not coming to conquer. They are coming to kill everything." The assembled aliens looked at each other with growing panic. The Altarians were peaceful people who had never hurt anyone. They'd spent their time making beautiful art and studying the stars. Their cities were made of living crystal that sang in the wind. Their children played in floating gardens that drifted through the sky like clouds. They had no weapons, no army, no way to fight back. "What about our fleet?" asked Senator Morden, a small blue creature with large eyes. "Can we get there in time?" Commander Zixai shook his head. "Our nearest battle group is 20 systems away. Even with the fastest ships, it would take 40 days to reach Altarian space. The Korthok will be there in 10. The hall fell silent. Everyone knew what that meant. By the time help arrived, there would be nothing left to save. The Korthok had a saying they enjoyed sharing with their victims before they died. "We do not take prisoners. We take trophies." Ambassador Veltar thought about the last time he had visited the Altarian homeworld. He remembered walking through their crystal gardens, listening to the music their buildings made when the wind passed through them. The Altarians had shown him their children, small crystal beings that glowed with inner light. They had been so happy, so full of wonder about the universe now. They were all going to die. "We have to do something," said Council Leader Yathera. Her voice was strong, but Veltar could see the fear in her golden eyes. "We cannot let this happen. Cannot let them die while we sit here and do nothing." "But what can we do?" asked Senator Morden. "We have tried talking to the Korthok. They laugh at our peace treaties. They use our diplomats for target practice." Commander Zixai had been thinking the same thing. The Korthok did not understand mercy. They saw kindness as weakness in peace, as cowardice. In their mind, only the strong deserved to live, and everyone else existed only to serve as entertainment for their warriors. "We could send out a general distress call," suggested Dr. Nalthi, the Council's chief scientist. "Broadcast it on all frequencies. Ask any species willing to help to come to the Altarians' aid." "Who would answer?" asked Senator Morden. "Everyone is afraid of the Korthok. Most species run when they hear that name." Council Leader Yathera stood up slowly. She was old even by her species' long-lived standards, but her voice still carried power when she spoke to the assembly. "We will send the call anyway," she said. "We will broadcast it across the galaxy. We'll ask for help from anyone brave enough to stand against evil. Even if no one comes, we will have tried. We'll not let the Altarians die without fighting." For them, the vote was quick and unanimous. Within minutes, the Council's most powerful transmitters began broadcasting the message across space. It went out on every frequency they knew, translated into hundreds of languages, carried by radio waves and quantum signals alike. The message was simple. This is the Galactic Council, calling for immediate assistance. The peaceful Altarian colonies are under threat of total destruction. The Korthok Empire is sending a massive fleet to destroy them. We need help. Anyone willing to stand against this evil, please respond. Time is running out. For the first few hours, there was only silence. The council members waited in the communications center, watching screens that showed nothing but empty space and dead signals. Some had already given up hope then. Just before the end of the first day, something unexpected happened. A signal appeared on the long-range sensors. It was weak and crude, carried by old-fashioned radio waves instead. of the quantum networks most civilized species used. But it was there. Communications Officer Felinar worked frantically to clean up the signal. The words that came through were spoken in a language no one recognized, by a voice that was deep and strange. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the Human. Vessel ends Liberty. We received your distress call. We're coming to help." The communications center fell completely silent. Ambassador Veltar stared at the screen in confusion. "Human?" he asked. "What is a human? I have never heard of this species." Dr. Nalthi was already searching the Council's vast database of known civilizations. After several minutes, she looked up with a puzzled expression. "There is no record of any species called humans in our files," she said. "No contact reports, no diplomatic records, nothing. They are completely unknown to us." "Where did the signal come from?" asked Council Leader. Yathera, Communications Officer Felinar, checked his instruments twice before answering. "The Outer Rim, Sector 7742. That area has never been explored. We always assumed it was empty space." Commander Zixai studied the star charts with growing confusion. "It is beyond the frontier worlds. Past the last trade routes. No civilized species lives out there. The conditions are too harsh. Planets are too dangerous. Maybe they are refugees," suggested Senator Morden. "People who were forced to settle in the dangerous areas because they had nowhere else to go." Dr. Nalthi shook her head. "Refugees do not have military vessels." This Captain Morrison spoke like a soldier, and he said they were coming to help fight the Korthok. "You do not offer to fight the galaxy's most feared empire unless you have some way to actually do it." Ambassador Veltar felt a strange mix of hope and worry growing in his chest. Hope because someone had answered their call for help. Worry because they had no idea who these humans were or what they were capable of. "How long before they reach Altarion space?" he asked. Communications Officer Felinar ran the calculations. "Based on their transmission point and standard hyperspace speeds, maybe 8 days. They will arrive just before the Korthok fleet does. They are telling the truth about coming," said Commander Zixai. "If they actually have the power to fight, we know nothing about these humans. They could be lying. They could be running some kind of trick. Or they could just be brave fools who do not understand what they are getting into." Council Leader Yathera stood up slowly. She walked to the great window that looked out into space, where billions of stars glowed in the darkness. Somewhere, out there, the Altarians were waiting for death to find them. And somewhere else, these mysterious humans were flying through the void either to save them or to die trying. "We will find out soon enough," she said quietly. "In 8 days, we will know what kind of people these humans really are. I just pray they know what they are getting into. The Korthok have never been defeated. They have never even been stopped." As the council members left the communications center, none of them knew that they had just made contact with the most dangerous species the galaxy had ever produced. They did not know that humans came from a world so hostile that it had spent billions of years trying to kill everything that lived on it. They did not know that surviving on such a world had turned humans into living weapons. The Korthok were about to learn what it meant to be prey. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan sat at her station aboard the UN's Liberty, watching the stars shift and bend as they dropped out of hyperspace. The human fleet had traveled for 6 days through the void, following coordinates transmitted by the Alien Council. Now they were finally here, at the edge of Altarion space. Amy had never seen an alien before. None of the humans had. Earth had been alone in the universe for as long as anyone could remember. They had always wondered if other life existed among the stars, but finding it had seemed like an impossible dream. Now that dream was about to become real. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge, his weathered face calm despite the magnitude of what they were about to do. He was a veteran of 3 wars on Earth, a man who had seen the worst humanity could do to itself. But this was different. This time, they were not fighting other humans. They were going to war with creatures they had never seen, to protect people they had never met. "Contact the Alien Council," he ordered. "Let them know we have arrived." Worked her controls, sending out a signal on the frequency the aliens had given them. Within minutes, a reply came back. The voice was high and musical, unlike anything she had ever heard. Human vessel, this is the Galactic Council. We are grateful for your response to our call for help. We are sending a shuttle to meet with you and arrange for formal first contact protocols. Captain Morrison nodded. Tell them we are ready to receive their representatives. An hour later, Amy watched through the Liberty's viewports as a strange craft approached their ship. It was smooth and curved, made of some kind of crystal that glowed with soft blue light. Nothing like the angular metal ships humans built. It looked more like a work of art than a machine. The alien shuttle docked with the Liberty's airlock. Captain Morrison and Dr. Elena Rodriguez, the fleet's xenobiologist, waited in the docking bay, along with a small security team. Amy had wanted to be there too, but someone had to stay at the communications station. The airlock opened with a soft hiss. 3 creatures stepped through, and Amy heard Dr. Rodriguez gasp over the intercom. The Altarions were beautiful. They stood about 6 feet tall, their bodies made of living crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. They moved with flowing grace, like dancers performing a slow ballet. When they spoke, their voices created harmonies that made the air itself seem to sing. But Amy noticed something else in their crystalline faces. Fear. These creatures were terrified. The lead, Altarion, introduced himself as harmony singer Leandros. Through a translation device, he explained the situation to the humans. The Korthok Empire was only 2 days away now. Their scouts had already been spotted at the edge of the system. We are grateful that you came, Leandros said, his musical voice trembling with emotion. But I must ask, how many ships did you bring? The Korthok have over 300 vessels? Captain Morrison's expression did not change. We brought 12 ships. The silence that followed was painful. Amy could see the hope dying in the Altarion's glowing eyes. 12 ships against 300. It was impossible odds, even for people who did not understand war. 12 ships, Leandros repeated slowly. I see. Well, we are still grateful that you tried. Perhaps your presence will make the Korthok think twice about their attack. Dr. Rodriguez stepped forward. She had been studying the aliens since they arrived, and Amy could see the excitement in her eyes even as she tried to remain professional. Can you tell us about the Korthok? She asked. What are they like? How do they fight? Another Altarion, introduced as Peacekeeper Velsami, activated a holographic display. Images appeared in the air showing large, insect-like creatures with thick armor plating and multiple arms ending in sharp claws. The Korthok evolved on a world with very low gravity, Velsami explained. They are large but not very dense. Their exoskeletons are hard but brittle. They rely on energy weapons and boarding actions to defeat their enemies. Captain Morrison studied the images carefully. Amy could see him thinking, processing the information like the tactical computer he had become through decades of warfare. What about their tactics? How do they organize their fleets? They form large battle groups and attack directly, Velsami replied. They believe that overwhelming force and brutal aggression will make their enemies surrender before the fighting really begins. Most species do exactly that. Most species, Captain Morrison repeated, but not all. Leandros made a sound like crystal chimes ringing in a sad song. There have been a few who tried to resist. The Korthok made examples of them, destroyed entire worlds just to show what happens to those who fight back. Amy watched as Captain Morrison exchanged glances with Dr. Rodriguez. She had worked with the captain long enough to recognize that look. It was the same expression he had worn before every major battle they had fought together. Cold determination mixed with carefully controlled anger. We need to see the tactical situation, Morrison said. Can you show us the system layout and the expected Korthok approach routes? For the next 3 hours, the Altarians shared everything they knew about the coming attack. Amy listened to it all, translating and recording every detail. The more she learned, the more amazed she became at how different these aliens were from humans. The Altarians had never fought a war. Their entire civilization was built around creating beauty and understanding the universe. They had no weapons, no military, no concept of organized violence. To them, the idea of intentionally hurting another living being was almost incomprehensible. The other species in the Galactic Council were not much different. They had conflicts, but they were usually resolved through negotiation and compromise. When wars did happen, they followed strict rules and protocols. Civilians were protected. Prisoners were treated well. Entire planets were never targeted for destruction. The Korthak had broken all those rules. They killed for pleasure and destroyed for sport. They had spent centuries terrorizing the galaxy, and no one had ever found a way to stop them. But as Amy listened to the tactical briefings, she began to understand why Captain Morrison seemed so calm. The Korthak fought the way bullies fought, with overwhelming force against weaker opponents. They had never faced anyone who could hit back harder than they could hit. They had never faced humans. Dr. Rodriguez was fascinated by the aliens themselves. During breaks in the tactical planning, she asked endless questions about Altarion biology and culture. Amy could see her scientific mind working, cataloging every detail about these first representatives of galactic civilization. Your bone density is remarkable, Dr. Rodriguez told Leandros during one conversation. And your muscle mass? How do you generate so much physical strength? The Altarian looked confused. We are not particularly strong. In fact, we are considered quite fragile by galactic standards. Dr. Rodriguez blinked in surprise. Fragile. But your skeletal structure can support 3 times more weight than it currently carries. Your muscles are incredibly efficient. By human standards, you are remarkably robust. By human standards? Velsami asked. What are your standards? Dr. Rodriguez paused, suddenly realizing what she was about to reveal. Well, humans evolved on a world with gravity nearly twice what most species consider normal. Our atmosphere is also much denser, with higher oxygen content. Most galactic species would find our home planet quite hostile. The Altarians exchanged glances. Amy could see them beginning to understand that the humans were not just another typical galactic species. What classification would your world receive? Leandros asked slowly. Dr. Rodriguez hesitated. According to galactic standards, it would probably be classified as a death world. The silence that followed was deafening. Amy had never heard the term before, but the reaction of the Altarians made its meaning clear. Death worlds were planets so dangerous that only the strongest and most adaptable species could survive on them. The Altarians were looking at the humans with new eyes now, not as potential saviors, but as something far more dangerous beings. Forged by a world that had tried to kill them every day of their evolutionary history, Captain Morrison seemed to sense the change in atmosphere. We should get back to planning, he said simply. The Korthak will be here soon and we need to be ready. As the aliens left to return to their own ships, Amy could see the fear in their eyes had been replaced by something else. Hope, maybe. Or perhaps a dawning realization that they had called for help from creatures who might be even more dangerous than their enemies. Over the next day, as the human fleet prepared for battle, Amy intercepted dozens of communications between Altarian ships and the Galactic Council. The word was spreading fast. The humans were Deathworlders. Beings from a world so hostile that survival itself had turned them into living weapons. Amy wondered what the Korthak would think when they learned what was waiting for them. The Korthak fleet dropped out of hyperspace like a dark storm cloud spreading across the stars. Admiral Thrackle stood on the bridge of his flagship, watching the sensor displays with satisfaction. 312 warships stretched out before and behind him, enough firepower to crack a planet in half. The Altarian system lay helpless before them. Thrackle had been looking forward to this moment for months. The Crystal Dwellers would make excellent hunting practice for his younger warriors. Their cities would burn beautifully, and their harmonic screams would provide entertainment for weeks. But something was wrong with the sensor readings. Admiral called his tactical officer. We are detecting unknown vessels in the outer asteroid. Field 12 ships of unfamiliar design. Thrackle's mandibles clicked in amusement. 12 ships? Someone has come to play hero? How delightful. Are they Galactic Council peacekeepers? Negative, sir. The ship designs do not match any known species in our database. Energy signatures are also unusual. The Admiral's compound. Eyes studied the display with growing interest. It had been too long since they had encountered something new. Most species in the galaxy were predictable, following the same cowardly patterns when faced with Korthok might. "Open communications," he ordered. "Let us see who these brave fools are." The main screen flickered to life, showing the interior of an alien bridge. Thrackle found himself looking at a creature unlike anything in his experience. The being was smaller than most galactic species, with smooth skin instead of proper scales or chitin. But there was something in its eyes that made the Admiral pause. "This is Captain Jake Morrison of the human fleet," the creature said. "You are ordered to withdraw from this system immediately." Thrackle threw back his head and laughed, a sound like breaking glass that echoed through the bridge. His officers joined in, filling the air with cruel mirth. "Ordered?" he finally managed to say. "Little creature, do you see my fleet? I have over 300 ships. You have 12? Do you not understand basic mathematics?" The human's expression did not change. "Numbers don't mean much if you don't know how to use them. This is your last warning. Leave now or face the consequences." The Admiral's laughter died away. The arrogance of this small being was amusing, but also insulting. No one had spoken to him like that in decades. "I think we will stay," he said slowly. "I think we will add your ships to our trophy collection. Attack Formation Alpha. Destroy the human vessels first. Make it slow, so the Altarians can watch their saviors die." The communication ended. Thrackle watched his fleet begin to move, spreading out in the classic Korthok battle formation. The 12 human ships looked pitiful against his armada, like mice facing a pack of wolves, but the mice were not running. Commander Rex Thompson sat in the pilot seat of the UNS Hunter, watching the Korthok fleet advance. His ship was part of the strike force hidden deep in the asteroid field, waiting for the perfect moment to strike. "All units, this is Thompson," he said into his communicator. "Remember the plan. Hit fast, hit hard, and keep moving. These bugs have never fought anyone who could match their aggression. Time to give them an education." The first wave of Korthok ships entered the asteroid field, moving in tight formation. Their energy shields glowed bright blue as they prepared to sweep away the small human force. They never saw the ambush coming. The UN's defender, under Captain Lisa Wong, had been drifting silent between two massive asteroids. As the lead Korthok cruiser passed within a few hundred meters, she fired her engines at full power. The human ship was built like a battering ram, the reinforced prow designed for ramming attacks. It struck the alien cruiser amidships with the force of a meteor, punching completely through the hull in a shower of sparks and debris. The Korthok ship broke in half, its crew exposed to the vacuum of space. Captain Wong's ship emerged from the wreckage with only minor damage to its armored front section. "First kill confirmed," she reported calmly, moving to secondary target. The Korthok fleet reacted with shock and confusion. Ramming attacks were considered primitive and barbaric by galactic standards. Civilized species used energy weapons and boarding actions, not crude physical impacts. But the humans were just getting started. The UNs. Wolverine came screaming out from behind a spinning asteroid, its weapons blazing. But instead of the expected energy beams or plasma bolts, it fired solid projectiles. Chunks of metal accelerated to incredible speeds by magnetic coils. The kinetic rounds punched through Korthok shields like they were made of paper. Energy barriers that could stop laser beams and particle weapons were useless against old-fashioned bullets. Traveling at a significant fraction of light speed, 3 more Korthok ships died in the opening minutes of the battle, their holes punctured by weapons that should not have worked against modern defenses. Admiral Thrackle watched the tactical display with growing disbelief. "What kind of savages are these?" he snarled. "They fight like animals, with no honor or sophistication." "Sir," his tactical officer reported, his voice shaking, "we are having difficulty tracking their vessels. They are using the asteroids as cover and moving in unpredictable patterns." The Admiral studied the display more carefully. Human ships were not following standard galactic combat doctrine. Instead of forming neat battle lines, they darted between the asteroids like predators stalking prey. They struck without warning, killed quickly, and disappeared back into the maze of spinning rocks. It was guerrilla warfare on a space-age scale, and the Korthok had never encountered anything like it. All ships advance into the asteroid field. Thrakel ordered. "We will root out these vermin and crush them." It was exactly what Captain Morrison had been hoping for. As the Korthok fleet moved deeper into the asteroid field, they found themselves fighting on terrain that favored the humans. The narrow passages between the rocks broke up their formation advantages. Their larger ships had trouble maneuvering in the tight spaces, and the humans knew every hiding place, Major. Danny Brooks coordinated the boarding actions from his position aboard the UN's Reaper. When Korthok ships became separated from their escorts, human marines struck like lightning. The aliens had never encountered beings like the human soldiers. Marines wearing powered armor that amplified their already impressive strength smashed through airlocks and bulkheads. The Korthok warriors evolved on a low-gravity world, found themselves facing opponents who moved like liquid metal and struck like hammers. A single human marine could take on 3 or 4 Korthok soldiers and win. Their bones were denser, their muscles stronger, their reflexes faster. They had been shaped by a world that had spent millions of years trying to kill them, and they had learned to kill back. But it was not just their physical advantages that devastated the Korthok. It was their mentality. The alien warriors had built their empire on fear and intimidation. They were used to enemies who begged for mercy when defeat became inevitable. Most galactic species would surrender when the odds turned against them, hoping to live and fight another day. Humans did not surrender. They fought harder when cornered. They became more dangerous as their situation became more desperate. Realized this during the boarding of his own flagship? A squad of human marines had somehow made their way to the bridge level, fighting through corridor after corridor of his best troops. He met them personally in the main hallway, determined to show these primitives what a true Korthok warrior could do. The Admiral was 8 feet tall and armored in biometal plates that could deflect most energy weapons. His forearms ended in claws that could slice through steel. The human who faced him was maybe 6 feet tall and looked fragile by comparison. But when the Admiral charged, expecting an easy kill, he found himself fighting something that should not have been possible. The human moved like water and struck like thunder. Every attack was perfectly placed, every countermove anticipated. When Thrakel's claws struck the Marine's armor, they skittered off without leaving a mark. When the human's weapon struck back, it punched through biometal like tissue paper. The fight lasted less than a minute. When it was over, Admiral Thrakel lay dying on the deck of his own ship, staring up at the creature that had defeated him. "What are you?" he whispered through blood-filled mandibles. The human removed his helmet, revealing a scarred face and eyes that had seen too much war. "We are what happens," the Marine said quietly, "when a planet spends 4 billion years trying to kill everything that lives on it. We are what you get when only the strongest, smartest, and most ruthless survive to pass on their genes." The Admiral's vision began to fade. "Deathworlders," he breathed. "That is right," the human agreed. "And you just made the biggest mistake. In your species' history, you attacked people we promised to protect." Thrakel died with that knowledge burning in his mind. Across the asteroid field, his fleet was dying with him. Ships that had terrorized the galaxy for decades were being torn apart by an enemy they had never imagined could exist. The hunters had become the hunted, and the prey had turned out to have fangs sharper than their own. Captain Morrison watched the tactical display from his bridge as the last Korthok ships began to retreat. Half their fleet was gone, destroyed, or captured. The survivors were fleeing in panic, their formation completely broken. The news traveled faster than light itself, carried by quantum communicators and hyperspace relay stations across the galaxy. In the great halls of 100 different worlds, alien leaders gathered around holographic displays showing the impossible. Battle footage from the Altarion system, the Korthok Empire, terror of the galaxy for over 2 centuries, had been crushed in a matter of hours by 12 ships from an unknown species, Council. Leader Yathera stood in the emergency session chamber, her golden eyes reflecting the glow of the tactical displays. Around her, representatives from 50 different species watched the battle recordings in stunned silence. The footage showed human ships moving through the asteroid field like living creatures, striking and vanishing with deadly precision. Play the ramming attack again, requested Senator Quinder from the Hegemony Worlds. His voice carried the tremor of barely controlled fear. The recording showed the UN's defender punching through the Korthok cruiser like a spear through paper. The alien ship broke apart in a shower of debris, while the human vessel emerged almost undamaged, already turning toward its next target. "This is madness," whispered Dr. Yelenoth, the Council's military advisor. "No civilized species builds ships for ramming attacks. The risk to their own crew is enormous, lest they do not consider it a risk," suggested Ambassador Veltar quietly. All eyes turned to him as he continued. "Look at their ship design. Reinforced prows, armored hulls 3 times thicker than standard. They built these vessels expecting to take massive damage and keep fighting. But why?" asked Senator Quinder. "Why choose such brutal tactics when energy weapons are so much more efficient?" The answer came from an unexpected source. Dr. Elena Rodriguez appeared on the main communication screen, transmitted from the human flagship. She had agreed to address the emergency council session, though she looked uncomfortable speaking to so many alien leaders at once. "You have to understand," she began. "Humans evolve very differently from your species. Our homeworld tried to kill us every single day for millions of years. Ice ages that lasted thousands of years. Predators that hunted in packs. Diseases that could wipe out entire populations. Volcanoes, earthquakes, storms that could level entire continents." The assembled aliens listened with growing horror as she described Earth's hostile environment. "We learned to be adaptable because anything that could not change quickly died. We learned to be aggressive because anything that would not fight back was eaten. We learned to use tools because we had no natural weapons. And we learned to work together because alone we were helpless against our world." Senator Morden raised a tentacle nervously. "Surely your species became more civilized as you developed technology. Surely you moved beyond such primitive survival instincts." Dr. Rodriguez was quiet for a moment. "We tried. We built cities and governments and laws, but then we started fighting each other. We had wars that killed millions. We created weapons that could destroy our entire planet. We had to learn how to control our aggression, not eliminate it." "Control it?" asked Council Leader Ythra. "We are still predators," Dr. Rodriguez explained. "We are still the children of a death world, but we learned to choose our targets. We learned to protect the innocent and hunt only those who would harm others. The Korthok chose to become monsters. It made them our prey." The session continued for hours as the galaxy tried to understand what humanity represented. Reports flooded in from across known space as the surviving Korthok ships spread word of their defeat. Other aggressive species began pulling back from planned conquests. Suddenly uncertain about their military superiority, Admiral Sarah Blake found herself in the strange position of explaining human military doctrine to beings who had never encountered anything like it. She stood in the council chamber on the converted Galactic Council station, surrounded by creatures who looked at her with mixtures of awe and fear. "Your weapons are primitive," stated General Corvalin of the Rigel Defense Force. "Kinetic projectiles and ramming attacks belong in museums, not modern warfare." Admiral Blake nodded calmly. "You are right. Our weapons are primitive. But they work because you were not prepared for them. Your shields stop energy beams and plasma bolts. They do nothing against a chunk of metal moving at half the speed of light." "But the energy requirements must be enormous," protested the general. "And the manufacturing costs are irrelevant when you are trying to survive," Blake interrupted. "We do not fight wars to show off our technology. Fight wars to win them as quickly as possible with minimum casualties to our own people." Dr. Nalthi, the Council's chief scientist, had been studying the human ship designs with fascination and horror. "Your vessels can operate in conditions that would kill most crews," she reported. "High gravity, toxic atmospheres, extreme temperatures. How is this possible?" "Because we come from a world with high gravity, toxic atmosphere, and extreme temperatures," Blake replied simply. "What you consider deadly conditions, we consider Tuesday." The implications were staggering. Most galactic species required carefully controlled environments to survive. Their ships were delicate constructions designed to maintain perfect conditions for their crews. Human ships were built like fortresses, able to function even with massive hull breaches and system failures. Captain. Morrison joined the discussion via holographic projection from the Altarion system, where human crews were helping repair the damage from Korthok raids. The real question, he said, is not how we fight, but why we fight. Your species seem to view war as a kind of game with rules and expected outcomes. To us, war is what happens when diplomacy fails and innocent people are in danger. But surely, you have rules of engagement? Asked Ambassador Veltar. Protocols for the treatment of prisoners and civilians. Of course we do, Morrison replied. But our rules are different from yours. We protect those who cannot protect themselves. Show mercy to those who surrender. But we do not show mercy to those who prey on the helpless. The discussion was interrupted by urgent communications from the border systems. Korthok survivors had reached their home territories, and the news of their defeat was causing panic. Throughout their empire, several species that had been enslaved by the Korthok for generations were beginning to revolt. More disturbing were reports from other aggressive empires. The hegemony of Zarkal had abruptly canceled their planned invasion of the Meridian colonies. The slaver guilds had pulled back from several border systems. Word was spreading that there were beings in the galaxy who could and would fight back against oppression, but not all the news was positive. Some species were reacting to the existence of humans with fear rather than gratitude. The Confederation of Pure Worlds had already passed resolutions declaring Deathworlders a threat to galactic civilization. Several trade guilds were discussing sanctions against any system that allowed human ships to dock. You scare them, Council Leader Yathera told Captain Morrison during a private communication. They have lived in a galaxy where violence was contained and predictable. Your existence changes everything. Morrison's expression was grim. We never wanted to be feared. We wanted to find our place among peaceful civilizations. But we will not stand by and watch innocents die when we have the power to help them. That is exactly what frightens them, the council leader replied. Most species in the galaxy have learned to accept a certain level of injustice as the price of stability. You represent something they thought was impossible, the idea that the strong have a duty to protect the weak. Over the following days, humanity found itself at the center of a galactic crisis. The defeat of the Korthok had created a power vacuum that other species were scrambling to fill. Some wanted to ally with the humans, seeking their protection against other threats. Others wanted to contain or eliminate them before they could disrupt the established order further. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan monitored the flood of communications reaching the human fleet. Messages of gratitude from liberated worlds, mixed with threats from species that saw humanity as a dangerous disruption to their plans. Captain, she reported, we are receiving formal invitations to establish diplomatic relations with over 30 different species. We also have warning messages from 12 others telling us to leave their space immediately. Captain Morrison studied the reports with a heavy heart. They had come to the stars hoping to find acceptance and friendship. Instead, it discovered a galaxy divided between those who welcomed their strength and those who feared their potential for violence. Dr. Rodriguez was documenting everything, knowing that her reports would shape humanity's relationship with the galaxy for generations to come. She had already identified the fundamental problem they faced. We represent something that does not exist in their experience, she explained to Morrison. A species capable of extreme violence that chooses to use that violence only to protect others. Most aggressive species are conquerors. Most peaceful species are victims. We do not fit their categories. The Altarians had become humanity's strongest advocates. Harmony singer Leandros addressed the Galactic Council directly, his crystalline voice ringing with emotion as he described what the humans had done for his people. 6 months had passed since the battle at Altarion space, and Lieutenant Amy Sullivan still found it hard to believe how much everything had changed. She sat at her communications station aboard the newly constructed Unity Station, a joint human-alien, a facility that served as humanity's first diplomatic outpost in galactic space. The station had been built in neutral territory, far from any major power's sphere of influence. Its design reflected the awkward compromise between human and alien needs. High-gravity sections for human crew members connected to low-gravity areas where most aliens felt comfortable. The atmosphere was carefully filtered to provide breathable air for dozens of different species. Amy watched through the main viewport as ships from across the galaxy came and went. Altarion crystal vessels glowed like jewels as they docked alongside human cargo ships. Melodian patrol craft escorted merchant convoys through what had once been Korthok territory. Even some former enemy species had begun sending diplomatic missions to meet with the mysterious Deathworlders. Captain Jake Morrison, bearing the title of humanity's first galactic ambassador, stood in the main briefing room addressing a gathering of alien representatives. His weathered face showed the strain of months spent trying to build bridges between species that had little understanding of each other. "The trade agreements are working well," he reported to the assembled aliens. "Human manufacturing is providing stronger materials for your construction projects. In return, your advanced computing systems are helping us improve our navigation and communications." Dr. Elena Rodriguez had become something of a celebrity in the scientific community. Her research on Deathworld evolution was revolutionizing. Galactic understanding of how life could develop under extreme conditions. She worked closely with alien scientists who were fascinated by the biological adaptations that made humans so formidable. "We have identified 17 other star systems that might harbor Deathworld species," she announced during one of her regular presentations. "Some of them show signs of technological development. Humanity may not be alone in our particular evolutionary path." The news sent ripples of excitement and fear throughout the galactic community. The idea that there might be other Deathworlder species had both positive and negative implications. Potential allies for humanity, but also potential threats if those species proved to be less benevolent than humans had turned out to be. Admiral Sarah Blake commanded the small but growing human fleet that patrolled the former Korthok territories. The collapse of the Empire had left a power vacuum that various factions were trying to fill. Most of the liberated worlds had formed their own governments, but some areas remained lawless and dangerous. "We are not trying to build an empire," Blake explained to her staff during a briefing. "Our job is to keep the peace until these worlds can defend themselves. We help those who ask for help, and we leave alone those who want to be left alone." It was a delicate balance. Some of the liberated worlds wanted human protection and were willing to accept human leadership in exchange for security. Others valued their newfound independence and viewed any outside interference with suspicion, even from their liberators. The Altarians had become humanity's closest allies in this new galactic order. Harmony singer Lyandros had established a permanent embassy on Unity Station, and his crystal-formed people served as intermediaries between humans and species that were still afraid of direct contact with Deathworlders. "Your presence has changed everything," he told Captain Morrison during one of their regular meetings. "Species that were enemies for centuries are now working together, united by their shared concern about what other threats might exist in the unexplored regions of space." But the changes were not all positive. The Confederation of Pure Worlds had grown from a small alliance into a major political force, bringing together dozens of species that viewed Deathworlders as a contamination of galactic civilization. They demanded that humans be quarantined to their own systems and prevented from spreading their violent influence to other worlds. Senator Quinder had become one of their most vocal leaders, arguing that allowing Deathworlders to integrate into galactic society would inevitably lead to more conflict and bloodshed. "Look at what they did to the Korthok," he proclaimed during council sessions. "Complete annihilation. Prisoners taken, no mercy shown. Is this the kind of justice we want in our galaxy?" Captain Morrison found himself defending human actions again and again. "The Korthok were not soldiers following orders," he explained patiently. "They were murderers who killed for pleasure. They had spent centuries terrorizing peaceful worlds. When someone like that refuses to surrender and continues to fight, you have to stop them permanently." The debate raged across the galaxy. Some species saw humans as necessary protectors in a dangerous universe. Others viewed them as a threat to the carefully balanced peace that had existed before their arrival. A few remained neutral, waiting to see which way the political winds would blow. Commander Rex Thompson led the human rapid response teams that answered calls for help from across the former Korthok territories. Pirate fleets, rogue military units, and criminal organizations had moved into the power vacuum, preying on worlds that had no defenses of their own. Each intervention followed the same pattern. The predators would attack, expecting easy victims. The humans would arrive and demonstrate that there were still consequences for harming the innocent. Word spread quickly that certain systems were under human protection. Most opportunistic raiders found easier targets elsewhere. But Thompson worried about the long-term implications of their role as galactic peacekeepers. "We cannot be everywhere at once," he told Admiral Blake. "And every time we intervene, we make more enemies among the species that profit from chaos." Dr. Rodriguez was working on a different approach. Studies of human psychology and biology had led her to develop training programs for other species, teaching them how to defend themselves more effectively. "We cannot protect everyone forever," she explained to the Galactic Council. "But we can teach others how to be strong enough to protect themselves. Not every species needs to become warriors, but every species should have warriors who can stand up to bullies." The program was controversial. Teaching other species to fight went against thousands of years of galactic tradition that emphasized diplomacy and peaceful resolution of conflicts. But the results were undeniable. Worlds that had been helpless against raiders were now able to defend themselves. Lieutenant Amy Sullivan monitored the communications that flowed through Unity Station every day. She saw the gradual changes happening throughout the galaxy as species adapted to the new reality. Trade routes were shifting, alliances were forming and breaking. Careful balance of power that had existed for centuries was being replaced by something entirely new. Some changes were subtle. Species that had never needed to consider military defense were quietly building small patrol fleets. Diplomatic protocols were being rewritten to account for the existence of beings who could not be intimidated by traditional threats. Other changes were more dramatic. The hegemony of Zarkal, once one of the galaxy's most aggressive expansion powers, had completely reversed course. Their ships now patrolled their own borders defensively instead of raiding neighboring systems. The mere possibility that they might attract human attention had been enough to end decades of predatory behavior. Captain Morrison received a private communication from Council Leader Ithara that summarized the situation perfectly. "Your species has become the apex predator of our galaxy," she told him. "Not through conquest or domination, but through the simple demonstration that evil actions have consequences. Most species are adapting to this new reality. Some are embracing it, a few are fighting against it, but none can ignore it." The conversation that followed would shape humanity's future in space. Morrison explained his people's long-term vision for their role in galactic civilization. "We do not want to be rulers or conquerors," he said. "We want to be the friends you call when someone is trying to hurt you. We want to be the neighbors who help you build something better. And when necessary, we want to be the monsters that other monsters have nightmares about." As the first year of human presence in galactic space came to an end, the results were clear. Piracy was at the lowest levels in recorded history. Aggressive empires were focusing on internal development. Instead of external conquest, peaceful worlds were sleeping more soundly knowing that someone was watching over them. The price of this new peace was the knowledge that humanity represented something unprecedented in galactic history, species capable of extreme violence, that chose to use that capacity only to protect others. Most aliens had learned to respect and even appreciate this strange combination of strength and restraint. But some would never accept it. The Confederation of Pure Worlds continued to grow, bringing together species that viewed humans as a contamination of galactic civilization. Intelligence reports suggested they were building military forces and forming secret alliances. The question was not whether conflict would come. When Amy Sullivan watched the stars from her station and wondered what the future would bring. Humanity had found their place among the stars, but it was not the place they had hoped for.